Last summer, for the first time in years, we went into an NBA season under the impression that the league was completely wide open in terms of winning a championship. There was no heavy favorite, there were a ton of teams with realistic chances of competing to make a deep run, and as we now approach the end of the season, those sentiments for the most part still hold true. Obviously, there are teams like the Lakers and Bucks at the top of each conference, but unlike prior years, where it was seen as a given that LeBron would be making the finals in the East and the Warriors would be coming out of the West, this year there are a ton of teams that could come out on top. Not only that, but the future of the league also appears to be wide open, with no certain dynasties forming anytime soon. One team that has done a phenomenal job preparing for the future contention is the Denver Nuggets, and I don't think enough people truly realize it. Along with finding Nikola Jokic in the second round back in 2014, they've proven to be able to find tremendous value later on in the draft in recent years as well. 2 years ago, they took a chance on Michael Porter Jr. in the draft while he was dealing with injury problems, and after the season he had this year, many are very high on him. But there's another example of the Nuggets taking a risk that really hasn't gotten the amount of coverage it should have, which brings us to the topic of today's video. Today, we'll be discussing Bol Bol, and throughout the video, we'll be discussing his journey to get to this point, what exactly went wrong and made him slip as far as he did in the draft, and why, after all the setbacks, I still think he's on track to be a big-time player in the NBA. Before we start though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. To start things off, let's just address the obvious by mentioning that Bol Bol is the son of former NBA player Manute Bol, but most of you probably already knew that. What you didn't know though, is that when he was born, Manute and the rest of his family were struggling quite a bit. Being born in Sudan, his family was actually barred from fleeing to the United States at the time, so they had to go through Egypt first before they could eventually make it to Connecticut. Luckily, once they touched down in America, things began to ease up for them, and that's when Bol Bol started playing basketball under his father's guidance. With Manute Bol standing at a massive height of 7'7", Bol Bol was always destined to tower over his competition and be blessed with terrific height for basketball, so from a young age, people started taking note of him on the basketball court. All the way back in 7th grade, he was 6'5", and his highlight reel from that age drew attention from popular media outlets such as CBS Sports and the Washington Post. His first Division I basketball offer came in the 8th grade by New Mexico State, and from there, his stature in the basketball world would only continue to grow as he did, both literally and figuratively. When he began his high school career, he was already 6'10" as a freshman, but the crazy thing is that he didn't even make the varsity team right away. He started at Blue Valley Northwest High School, but then early on in the year it came out that he didn't actually live in the school district, so he transferred to Bishop Miege High School in Kansas, where he continued his freshman season. But even there, he couldn't break out of the JV team. Transfer rules played a part in him not playing for varsity, but even after he became eligible, he still didn't carve out a role on the varsity team as a freshman. Despite all of this, it didn't really seem to faze any college coaches or scouts a bit, because when the first class rankings came out, he still ranked amongst the top of the class by 24/7 Sports, and going into his sophomore year, he was carrying a ton of momentum from the AAU circuit that got him on the radar of even more schools. This time around, he not only broke into the varsity team, but was one of the most impactful players for Bishop Miege, and by the end of the year, he helped lead them to a 22-win season and a state title. He was named first-team All-State, he continued to grow both in terms of height and skill, and he even received a scholarship offer from Kansas. Then, as has already started to become a trend and will continue to be throughout his high school career, he transferred to Mater Dei for his junior season. It should be noted that at this time he had grown all the way up to 7'2", and that kind of height on the court only made him more intriguing of a player. At Mater Dei, he was unfortunately only able to lead them to a runner-up finish, but their season did feature a win against the Chino Hills team that featured the Ball brothers. It was at the Nike EYBL tournament that he really really broke out, and after posting averages of 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 blocks per game, he received offers from even more big-time programs like Kentucky, Oregon, UCLA, Arizona, and USC. For the last year of high school, he once again transferred, this time to Findlay Prep, and here he concluded an illustrious career by being named a McDonald's All-American and committing to play for Oregon in college. In the final rankings of the recruiting class of 2018, Bol ranked as the 4th best player according to ESPN, 24/7 Sports, and Rivals, and he looked completely set to play his way into the lottery in the draft as well as being a one-and-done prospect. Everything was going to plan early on, and his ridiculously versatile skill set for someone so tall was on full display. Through 9 games at Oregon, he was averaging about 21 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 blocks per game, while shooting the ball a scorching hot 56% from the field and 52% from 3 on 3 attempts per game. Keep in mind now that this guy is 7'2", lighting up the competition from both inside and out, and his ability to protect the rim and make life hell for anyone that tries to score at the cup only made NBA scouts salivate over his potential even more. He was, as has become a popular term in recent years, every bit of a unicorn-type player, and things couldn't have possibly been going better for him at the start of the season. But it all came crashing down when he injured his foot in that 9th game, and an injury like that for a big guy has historically resulted in trouble. The injury held him out of the entire rest of the college season, and a lot of skepticism about him from before the year started to pile on even more, which marks the point where we will now be transitioning into a more in-depth look at his game and how he plays, as well as how scouts have viewed him as a prospect over the last few years. As a player, Bol Bol is not your average center by any stretch of the imagination. As I mentioned previously, he's 7'2", incredibly skinny, and has ridiculously long arms with a whopping 7'8" wingspan. That height and length allows him to see over defenses, get his shot off very easily without being affected all that much by contests, and on the defensive side of things, he has terrific shot blocking instincts. This especially comes into play for Bol because he likes to play on the outside, and his uncanny shooting ability at the center position does to a degree stem from this benefit. Having made over half of his three-point attempts is incredibly impressive, and even though he did it in a small sample size, it's reasonable to believe that he'll still be a good shooter when he makes his debut in the NBA, because he's been excelling from that range his whole career, even back in high school. Along with that, he even has some of the skill set of a winger, being able to handle the ball unusually well for someone his size, and his ability to maneuver past defenders will undoubtedly create some matchup nightmares. He finishes well around the rim, his incredibly soft touch around the basket and from the perimeter, and overall, his game is incredibly smooth. However, with all of the positives I've mentioned, there are undoubtedly some negatives as well, which we'll get into now. For starters, he's way too thin to realistically expect to survive the physical toll of a full NBA season, and putting on weight is going to be one of his biggest priorities for years to come. Another concern is obviously the foot injury, which has historically impacted big men that suffered similar injuries in the past. This especially became alarming for NBA scouts because of the type of stress fracture it was, as the specific bone in the foot it happened to is actually the one that bears a majority of the weight when standing and moving around on it. One last concern with his game is his lack of lateral quickness and agility, because while rim protection is more important than ever in today's NBA, slower big men that can be taken advantage of in space have become somewhat of a liability. All of this was taken into account, and it's the biggest reason why the 2019 NBA draft went down the way that it did. After being seen as a perennial top 5 pick early on in the college season, he somehow slipped all the way to the second round and was selected 44th overall by the Miami Heat, but was then traded to the Denver Nuggets. Ever since then, we haven't really seen or heard much from Bol Bol. That is, until recently. In the bubble, Bol joined the Nuggets for training camp. He appears to be back to full health, or at least close to it, and that in and of itself could be scary for the rest of the league. In case you missed it, I'll now be playing a brief clip of what has been happening in the bubble scrimmages so you can see just how well he's been progressing. That didn't exactly look like someone still hampered by his foot. The guy who was supposed to be a top 5 pick might just be back, and that was showcased in front of the whole world when the Nuggets put him in the starting lineup for their first televised scrimmage. In the game against the Wizards that they played yesterday, he scored 16 points, grabbed 10 rebounds, and blocked 6 shots. At this point, him slipping to 44th is criminal and making every single GM look kinda dumb, because the talent was always there. If he is back and ready to play, then the Nuggets have an X factor on their hands that can make some big time plays, but realistically, what kind of role can he have? They used him as a small forward funnily enough in that scrimmage, but I don't think that's sustainable at all against actual competition. The Nuggets will probably try him at power forward alongside Jokic for brief spells, and this could be pretty interesting. Jokic is probably the perfect player for him to play alongside on the offensive end because he's such a ridiculously good passer, and Bol's ability to space the floor would open things up for him even more. The two have played off of each other well in brief spurts, and down the line, the chemistry will likely continue to build. Defensively is where it gets tricky though, because Jokic isn't exactly the best defensive player, and Bol Bol doesn't have the lateral quickness to hang with forwards, so one of them would be forced into a matchup that they would struggle with. And while the help side rim protection from Bol would definitely bolster their back line defense and give Jokic some help there, the other aspects of defense would probably falter. I think the smartest and safest route is for them to ease Bol into some backup center minutes, see how he fares, and try not to work him too hard, especially knowing his injury history. He still has a long career ahead of him, and even though the injury risk will seemingly always loom because of the severity of what he suffered in the past, if all goes well, the Nuggets will have the biggest steal of the whole draft capable of bringing dominance for years to come. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think of Bol Bol's return and his future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.